I don't want no oil spoiling my shoreline. I like fish much better than crud. I like birds and things creeping and crawling. Won't trade no more oil for blood. The sun done give us all we need to make this country run. But that black demon oil's got us fussing and fighting, and I do believe it's time we was done. I don't want them nukes run by them kooks who think radioactivity is fun. No more three-headed frogs or kids with leukemia. Nuclear power ain't fit for a dog. The sun done give us all we need to make this country run. But that nuclear power's got us fussing and fighting, and I do believe it's time we was done. No nukes!
Good morning, Toledo, and good afternoon, Columbus. Good evening, Bowling Green, and hello to everyone on the internet, wherever and whenever you are. My name is Joe DeMare, and I'm here with my wonderful co-host,
Rebecca Wood.
Yes, and together Rebecca and I are going to craft another week of unforgettable radio called For a Green Future. And For a Green Future is a show where we talk about ecology and the environment. And we talk about it in the ways that it affects you, your wealth, your health, your happiness, the wealth and health and happiness of your friends and your family and your coworkers, and the birds and the bees and the trees and the worms and the acorns and basically everyone and everything. Because, like it or not, all of us are...
And a thing called love. I mean, let me tell you about the birds and the bees. Sorry, jukebox in my mind is firing off again.
Well, we have to be careful because we can't just sing tunes on here in this day of
I think I sang it badly enough that it doesn't count.
The AI won't recognize it.
Yeah.
It's entirely possible. So, so we have a great show lined up for you today. We're going to chat for another 10 minutes or so here. And then we have an interview with our good friend, Dr. Mark Jacobson from Stanford University. And he's going to be talking to us about some great things that have been happening out there in California in terms of renewable energy. Then we will hear from our wonderful, wonderful patrons and sponsors. And then, Rebecca, it will be your turn at the mic. And what are you going to talk to us about today?
I'm going to do a segment that I'm calling Euphorbia Confusion.
What kind of confusion? I'm already confused.
See, it's working.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's about flowers. A certain type of flower, which is red and associated with Christmas.
Aha. Okay.
I'm trying to wean myself off using the European name for it.
All righty. Well, great. And we're looking forward to that. And then we have some ecological news from around the world, some good, some bad. And we're trying to live stream today, basically. And YouTube is not cooperating at all. And so we're going to have to apologize to everybody. We actually did a little preview because we came out this week and we tested in the studio, and it turns out we have great Wi-Fi access here, but but now YouTube is saying that I can't actually go live, which is very disappointing. So we're going to just keep working on that, try to get that going. But in the meantime, we're going to continue on because this is primarily a radio show, don't forget. And it's actually a call-in show, which we have, set up this way so that you can participate. And you can call in anytime at 877-909-1007. That's 877-909-1007. And you can talk to us about any sort of ecological or an environmental issue. And this is a kind of an interesting time because it's been a great week, weather-wise. It's been really warm and everything. Today it's only about 4 degrees above average, but most of the week we were at about 20 degrees over average, which, feels great, but it has consequences, Some people are kind of like, oh, I don't mind global warming if it means, it's warm in the wintertime, but no, there's a price to be paid if you try to do that. So, YouTube literally just is not cooperating at all. This worked earlier the week when I came in.
Well, it always works when you don't need to do it, Joe.
Good point.
That's how the universe works.
Aha, wait a minute. Wait, it might be working. Hold on here. I just got to click a few things, and we may be going live. All right. But in the meantime, while this tries to work out here, we're going to talk a little bit about what's going on in other parts of the world. And the theme for the part I want to talk about today is actually what happens with corruption in the world, because there was a news story that was in the news this past week. It turns out that Kristi Noem, who's Trump's Homeland Security gal, she's
going to keep us safe from puppy dogs.
Yes, the one who famously likes to shoot.
Who sneezed or something.
Four-legged things. That she basically, this is a story in ProPublica. They broke this news, and it has made some headlines, but not, it hasn't received the attention that it should have been receiving. And that is that she apparently did $140 million to a company which is owned by they'll say that a company that hired a company that sort of an anonymous company, an LLC that nobody knows what it is, and they apparently hired
here we
company to do these really super expensive commercials. Like she went to Mount Rushmore, and she rode a horse around, and she paid this. And this company apparently got hired for like $140 million to make a commercial that showed her, sitting on this pony and talking about how, we'll prosecute you if you try to cross the border. And this was apparently a no-bid contract, and it went to a good friend of hers, her good friend of her, actually her official spokesperson for the Homeland Security. Her husband owns this company, which apparently got $140 million in pass-through, and so for no bids. And essentially, this is what corruption looks like. All right, so we can't legally say that this was actually like a kickback situation because we don't have like legal proof that's true. But when you funnel hundreds of millions of dollars to companies owned by your good friends who you hired, that looks like corruption.
It's a little tiny white animal with a yellow-orange beak that goes quack quack.
It does look like that, doesn't it? Yeah.
Yes.
Waterproof bird.
Yes. Yeah. some waterfowl from the genus Anatidae, I believe. Yeah, something.
But this has an effect, on it's not just a case of money moving around. This actually affects the world. It affects the environment. And of course, one of our focuses on this show is that there's no industry that's more corrupt than the nuclear industry. And of course, we have spent many hours on this show talking about the great corruption that was House Bill 6. And House Bill 6, was a sort of a demonstration of how corruption is the norm when it comes to the nuclear industry. And in fact, that was the defense of Larry Householder, who's in prison now for 20 years. His defense literally was, "This is just business as usual." You just,
But I do it all the time.
yeah, you just give us money,
Hey.
and we write you laws, and where's the corruption in that?
Right.
So,
right.
but there was a big story this past week because what happened in Ukraine, apparently they've arrested 5 people, and there was this apparently how should I say, well-developed corruption going on there. Where there's like 5 people or so who they were a shadow management for the nuclear industry, the nuclear company that runs all of Ukraine's nuclear plants, called Energoatom. And these 5 people who've been arrested, according to the government of Ukraine, they added 10 to 15% to the cost of everything Energoatom did because they got bribes on top of it. They essentially required bribes from every single contractor whenever they had to do anything. Like, yeah. Oh, sorry. And so that is another example of the corruption. And I think like in an immoral industry like nuclear, where you're generating wastes that are going to be hurting people for millions, literally millions of years, it tends to attract immoral people. If
Probably.
once you've made the moral decision or the immoral decision that it's okay if we poison future generations for our benefit, then the idea of stealing money in order to do that gets a lot easier.
There we go.
It's kind of like, that's not as bad as what we're actually doing. So I may as well skim some money off the top, because
Yeah.
I'm going to be poisoning my great-great-grandchildren. I should at least get, I should at least be able to afford a hot tub.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah. So
What kind of sucker poisons their great-great-grandchildren and doesn't even get a hot tub?
exactly. So in the context of what's going on today, in the larger picture globally, right now I wanted to mention that that we're having Conference of Parties in Brazil is going on right now down there, which is supposedly the UN's, which is supposedly the world's response to global warming. And that is being affected by corruption. And we're going to talk more about that after the interview and after we talk to Rebecca. That's actually our first story, was going to be talking about COP30. But what do you think? What are your opinions on this? Give us a call at 877-909-1007, or you can actually text us now also during the show, 419-973-5841. So, all right. So now, a very uncorrupt guy, a guy who's, very honest and straightforward, the way good engineers are, is our good friend, Mark Jacobson. And I've been following his social media posts all summer because he's been documenting the fantastic progress that's being made in California to actually get off carbon and switch to a carbon-free wind, water, and sun-based energy system. So let's go to that interview now. Hello, and welcome back to For a Green Future. Could you please share with us your name and who you're with?
Yeah, Mark Jacobson at Stanford University.
Yeah, well, thanks for coming back on the show, Mark. I've been following your social media posts all summer, and you're there in Stanford in California, and it's been kind of a record-breaking year there in terms of alternative energy, hasn't it?
Yes, well, on the main grid, which supplies about 82% of California's electricity, clean renewable energy, which is really wind, solar, geothermal, and hydroelectric power on California's grid, has supplied over 100% of demand on so far 217 days this year, for on the order of 3 or 4 to 4 hours a day on average over all days of the year. and has displaced about 37% of gas over the last 2 years. So gas use is down 37%. And really what's grown is solar, utility scale solar, and also behind the meter solar, rooftop solar, which has reduced demand. So rooftop solars help reduce demand. Utility solars increase supply. Batteries are then taking excess utility solar and shifting that solar electricity to nighttime, displacing the gas. So huge growth of solar, huge growth of batteries, and growth of both utility solar and behind the meter solar.
Hmm. And essentially, it's breaking records practically every day, right?
Well, yes. I mean, last year and the whole year, there were about 135 days of the year where the wind, water, solar supply exceeded demand for part of the day. We still have about a month and a half left of this year, and we've already had 217 days this year. But also the average so far, about 55% of all demand over all hours of the year has been met with wind, water, solar this year. That's almost 4% higher than last year. Last year was around 51% at this time. So if we actually extrapolate that out forward, if we continue growing at that pace, California will be 100% renewable 24 hours a day, 365 days a year by around 2037, 2038. So within 12 to 13 years, which is really good news. And but we need to address not only electricity, which we're talking about, but also transportation, buildings, and industry. Those sectors need to be electrified, and then we'll need more electricity for those sectors really to be 100% renewable across all energy sectors.
Hmm. Now, part of the good news, part of the things that you talked about is the fact that once we do that, once we electrify everything, we actually need less energy overall.
Yes, electrification of transportation, for example, reduces energy use a lot. Like an individual car that runs on gasoline versus an individual car that runs on battery electricity. A battery electricity car uses 1/4 the energy as a gasoline car. So even though we'll need more electricity to run a battery electric car, we need less overall energy when you combine electricity plus the energy in gasoline, for example, less overall energy to run transportation by electrifying transportation. Same thing with heating buildings. When we use electric heat pumps, an electric heat pump uses 75% less energy than a gas heater. So even though we'll use more electricity with electric heat pumps, we use less overall energy. So we will need more electricity overall when we electrify all energy sectors, but we're going to need a lot less overall energy. And we can then provide the electricity from clean renewable sources, so eliminate the greenhouse gases associated with energy. We can eliminate the air pollutants associated with energy, and we can provide more energy security with clean renewable energy versus fossil fuels.
So it wasn't that long ago that utility officials, so-called experts in the field of electricity and energy, were saying that numbers like the ones we're seeing were actually impossible, that grids couldn't handle more than 50% from renewable energy sources. You've always maintained otherwise. In fact, you maintain we can get to 100% wind, water, and solar, and in fact that we have to. Does it, do you feel vindicated by the actual numbers that are coming in California and other grids around the world?
Yeah, in fact, it was about 2009, 2010 that people were saying we can't get more than 20% renewables on the grid. And that's just a made up number. That number subsequently was increased to like 50%, then 80%, then 90%, then 95%. There's no limit to how much renewables we can have on the grid to have stable grids. And there are 12 countries in the world that are 100% renewables on their grid. And, they're dominated by hydro, but there are now many grids that are dominated by wind that are over 100% renewable. South Dakota for the last year, at least from mid 2024 to mid 2025, was 120% wind, water, solar as a percent of its demand. So it produced 88% of its demand from wind, another about 30%, close to 30% from hydropower, and another 2% from solar. And so it had more electricity, it produced more electricity than it needed. In addition to the wind, water, solar, there's another 17% from fossil fuels. So it produced more than it needed and exported the difference. The point is that it produced over 100% of its demand from just wind, water, solar. In fact, there are 11 states that in the last year produced between 50 and 120% of their demand from wind, water, or solar, and 7 of those states are dominated by wind. So we're just seeing more and more that this whole myth that you can't run a grid on clean renewable energy because of its intermittency is just nonsense. I mean, we have batteries as backup. Hydro is the biggest type of backup in the world. Pumped hydroelectric is the second biggest, and batteries are now growing and displacing gas all over the place. In California, we see this, that there's so much batteries on the grid. The battery peak capacity is about 45% of the average power demand on California's main grid. And these batteries are 4-hour batteries. So in other words, these batteries on California's grid can supply 45% of the average power demand for 4 hours. And that's almost all those batteries were just installed in the last 2 years. So you can see that we can double, triple in the next 4 or 6 years, we can triple the number of batteries we have on the grid, and we'll meet not only the average power demand with batteries, but the peak power demand with batteries, if necessary. I mean, we can also add more solar, we can add enhanced geothermal, we can add offshore wind, we can do a lot of things to get to 100% renewables 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, not only in California, but everywhere worldwide.
And this is all happening in California, despite the fact that you folks are building your share of data centers out there, right?
Yeah, California has the third most data centers in the US. And it not only has that, it has by far the most electric cars, and it has a huge number of electric heat pumps. So despite all this growth of data centers, electric cars, electric heat pumps, actually the demand on the main grid this year is down 2% versus last year, largely because of the growth of behind the meter rooftop PV. When people put solar on their homes, for example, they use that electricity first. So they need less grid electricity. So even though there's an increase of demand for grid electricity due to cars, heat pumps, and data centers, that a lot of that's being offset by rooftop solar. So that's really the first line of defense against these big data centers is build more rooftop solar, put solar on everybody's roof. I mean, you can fly over, who has the most data centers? Virginia by far. Then Texas and California are almost tied for second and third. And, Virginia, they're talking about, well, what are we going to do with all these demand for new data centers? Well, it's obvious. Put solar on your roof, on the rooftops of all your homes and businesses. And even ask people who want to build data centers, have them, if they can't build a new solar plant to supply their solar, have them purchase people's rooftop solar and battery systems to offset the data center use, because that will do the job as well. And it'll be actually more effective because that's an effective way because people individually can then, especially if they have batteries, can smartly reduce grid electricity demand when it's that you have peaks in demand, like in the late afternoon, early evening in a lot of places. Anyway, so there are solutions to all the problems we face if we actually think smart and stop thinking about gimmicks. Gimmicks include adding carbon capture to fossil fuel plants, taking carbon out of the air. That's a gimmick. That just increases carbon dioxide because it takes energy, and that energy is usually renewable, and using renewable energy to take carbon out of the air prevents that renewable energy from displacing a coal plant, which would eliminate more carbon and more air pollution. And so effectively, carbon capture is always increasing CO2 because it's an opportunity cost. Biofuels is a ridiculous opportunity cost. 1.24% of all US land is needed just to grow corn for ethanol for only 4% of US transportation energy. And it doesn't reduce any carbon because all the energy it requires to produce the ethanol and transport it. And it's just a waste. It produces air pollution just like gasoline. So no benefit whatsoever. Nuclear, you can't even build it in less than 17 years in the US. Doesn't matter if it's small modular reactors or even worse because they don't exist. They're vaporware, non-existent technology that people just pretend as if they're existing and they're being built. They're not. They're not even approved for anything. And they're not being built and they're not licensed. They're not commercial. And they'll take, even if they were, they would just take just as long as large reactors and they'd be even more expensive because we went down to small reactors where people started talking about small reactors, not remembering that the reason we went to large reactors is because of economies of scale. So there's, useless solutions that are being pushed. And because we're wasting time in the US with these useless solutions, we're not transitioning as fast as we should be, as fast as many other countries are, such as China. China's transitioning way faster than the US because they're focusing on clean renewable energy and electrification, not on gimmicks and nonsense.
Right. I guess China actually, their CO2 production has finally plateaued there after going up for many decades uh, because of the solar. So the argument that's being made by the Secretary of Energy, by the president, that we need to build, I think they said 10 new large nuclear plants because of the demand by data centers. That the facts on the ground, what's actually happening, says that that's not true, basically, right? Sort of disproves that.
Well, I mean, they could say we need 10 new data centers, but they're not going to build them because, again, you can't go from planning to operation of a new nuclear plant in the US in less than 17 years. So they can talk all they want, squawk all they want. It's not going to happen. And it would cost, if they did, it would cost like the last two reactors that were built, they cost 34 to 35 billion dollars or almost $16 a watt compared to new solar is less than $1 a watt.
Yeah, you're
And
talking about the Vogtle plants in Georgia.
yeah, in Georgia. And so they want to take something that, and it only takes like half a year to put up rooftop solar, but a year to 3 years these days for utility solar versus 17 to 23 years for a new nuclear plant. So you're going to end up waiting like 14, 15 years more for something that costs, in terms of capital costs on the order of 16 times more. It's just silly and nonsensical, and it won't help anything because it won't be built. And so it's just a distraction from actual real solutions.
So we're finally on the path, basically. We're heading in the right direction, even though we're doing it too slowly at this point. But you kind of laid this path out, didn't you, in several books? Could you just remind our listeners the titles of your books?
Well, I have a new book coming out in January called Still No Miracles Needed, which
Ah,
is a follow-up from a previous book called No Miracles Needed, which is really how we can solve our climate, air pollution, and energy security problems with existing technology without the need for miracle technologies. Anyway, it's an update and it describes in detail what is needed for a transition. And but in the past, we've developed energy plans for countries and states starting in 2009. Um, and the more over time, these plans have become more detailed, but also the costs have come down. The technology costs have come down quite a bit. There are more technologies available. For example, we now have enhanced geothermal, which allows baseload. If you're a fan of baseload, you love enhanced geothermal because it allows baseload electricity, just like nuclear, but you can build it way faster than nuclear. Would take 3 years instead of 17 years from planning to operation for enhanced geothermal, and it'll cost a lot less, and it's a lot safer. It doesn't have weapons proliferation risk. It doesn't have underground uranium mining lung cancer risk. It doesn't have meltdown risk. You don't have to store waste for 200,000 years. So enhanced geothermal is a good technology that you can put pretty much anywhere. And this is another solution for data centers if people are interested. There's also fire brick storage for high temperature industrial heat. Before you needed furnaces on demand for high temperature industrial process, but now you can store heat up to 2000 degrees Celsius in fire bricks using resistance heating elements in the bricks. So whenever you have extra wind or solar, that can be used to generate heat in these bricks. And you store that heat for hours to days to weeks. And when you need heat, high temperature heat, you run air through the channels in the bricks. That air is then sent to heat a metal, and then it can use that waste heat from that can be used for even another process afterwards. So you can replace 90% of industrial furnaces with these fire bricks, and they're much lower cost. They're much lower cost than even batteries because they're made of dirt, basically. And so this is another technology that is very hopeful. Anyway, so we've had new technologies, lower costs, and actual examples of high penetration renewable grids that are breaking records every day.
All right. Well, we'll look forward to that book.
Well, it's Cambridge University Press.
Cambridge Press.
It's
Okay.
available most anywhere.
All right. So that was our interview with the great Mark Jacobson. And thanks so much for listening. And for once again trying to stream at the same time. So I'm pushing buttons on my computer and nothing's happening. But you folks who are with us on radio, thank you so much for listening. And now it's time to hear from our advertisers and patrons. Forest Green Future is brought to you by the Wood County Park District.
Imagine a place where nature meets adventure, where you can climb, paddle, fish, and explore. That place? It's right here in Wood County. The Wood County Park District is here to protect, preserve, and inspire. We conserve natural and cultural treasures so you can enjoy the outdoors like never before by maintaining green spaces, providing fun programs, restoring wildlife habitats, and leading outdoor adventures. The Wood County Park District, preserving nature, creating adventure, and inspiring a greener future.
Want to connect with nature? Try your hand at archery, bouldering, geocaching, paddling, rappelling, and more. Whether you're seeking experience or a peaceful retreat, our parks are open every day from 8 a.m. to 30 minutes past sunset all year round. Come explore, get outside, experience nature, your parks, your adventures waiting for you. Find us online at wcparks.org or follow on Instagram, Facebook, or X, or call 419-353-1897. That's 419-353-1897. The Wood County Park District, preserving nature, creating adventure, and inspiring a greener future. And our show is also brought to you by our wonderful patrons. And those are people who've gone to patreon.com, that's Patreon. There they searched for For a Green Future, up popped our Patreon page, and they chose a membership level that matched their budget. And before you do it, they were helping out the show by giving us a little bit of money every month, and that's how we can afford to keep this show on the air. And we're also, part of the reason we're trying to stream here is because we're sort of revamping our internet presence here on For a Green Future. And so from the entire For a Green Future team, we wanted to say the future isn't imagined, it's built. We are renovating For a Green Future to fit the needs of every generation, new leadership, a refreshed mission, and a digital backbone powered by AI to deliver timely climate action to you. We hired Shabazz Khan as our media and communications specialist. Our media and communications will be connecting people with science, solutions, and stories that matter, faster, clearer, and more accessible than ever. The torch is steady, the flame is bright, and the message is simple. Care for the climate, care for each other, and act with knowledge, because the future belongs to those who prepare today. Visit Joe DeMare foragreenfuture.org to join, learn, and act. So, Rebecca.
Yes.
That brings us to you.
All right.
Yes, and what are we talking about this week?
Okay, well, this week I'm doing a correction of my early statements about the native name of the poinsettia slash Quetla shoshitl. Quetla shoshi.
Okay.
Yeah,
all right.
plant. Or poinsettia, as it is sometimes called and probably should not be. For one thing, I've always been upset about poinsettias because it looks like poinsettia, but you pronounce it poinsettia.
Right.
I don't like that. I never have liked that. It's very annoying to me. So, yeah. So this week I was talking to somebody online, and they told me apparently they are they have some Nahuatl ancestry, and they said that point the Quetla Xochitl does Quetla Quetla Xochitl. Quetla Xochitl, yeah.
Okay.
That's the I'm trying to get this right here because one of the things I learned is how it's actually pronounced. You don't see the final L, and the X is like a sh sound. So it's very kind of mushy. You have to work yourself up not to drool in advance. But yeah. Okay, the first thing that I found, the first time that I tried to look up the name was that it was there was also a kind of a edible slug popular somewhere in Mexico named the Cuetla. So I thought it had to do with that. And then somebody posted a meme who was, I believe, Native American as far as I can remember, saying it actually meant poop flower.
Okay.
And so that was the theory I went with, but I probably should have investigated a little further because somebody this week told me it doesn't mean either of those things. According to them, let me see, its name has something to do with leathery leaves, residue, the concept of soil or residue, and also the waving motion of a worm, which resembles the waving of a field of flowers, which is very poetic, very poetic. It's almost sort of, the way things mean different things in Chinese. They have sort of multiple layered meanings with Chinese characters, which should give us a lot of respect for the Nahuatl civilization. But yeah, so I decided to look into this and see what I could find from documented sources this time. I'm not sure. And I found like a lot of conflicting information. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, it's also sort of it's a correction / admission of defeat. But these are some things that I found.
Okay.
Okay. So, according to the University of Minnesota, its Latin name is Euphorbia pulcheria. So that has nothing to do with poinsettia, this old poinsettia guy who was bad. And I think that means the prettiest euphorbia, pulcheria. Yeah, okay. Which is a little mean to the other, it's like you have a family and you're like, oh yeah, that's the pretty sister and that's the smart one. Not good. Mm-hmm. Probably hurts all their feelings. But yeah, according to the Minnesota Landscape Arboretum article of 11/20, on November 2023 by Sarah Jackson. It's pronounced Quetla Xochitl or Xochitl. You sort of say the T, but you can't hear it that much. But yeah, it has to do with the word quitlatl or residue, which she thinks has to do with the white sap that it gives off. Other people have said that, the Newark Advocate in their 12/1/2022 article by Tara Gill thinks that it means flower that grows in residue or soil. And the Maya call it apparently the kalulwitz or ember flower, bright flower. According to urbanstems.com article from 12/8/2022, I believe, it's called brilliant flower. Only they associated that with the Nahuatl term. I think they just got that wrong. That's the Mayan term for it. According to the ny1.com, got this from the Associated Press apparently on 12/20/2023. It's also known as the flower that withers, or that has something to do with the name, the actual name, Quetla Xochitl. So they also said it's associated with the goddesses Coatlicue, Tonantzin, and now the Virgin Mary, who's sort of become a stand-in for all of them. In Mexican religion, Coatlicue is a serpent goddess. She's the mother goddess and a serpent goddess. I don't know as much about Tonantzin, but she's something about the lady with the serpent petticoat, I believe her name means, and that has to do with waving, waving, slugs, waving, a lot of waving things here. Uh-huh. But yeah, that is you may think you're tough, but are you wearing snakes for underwear? I think not. So, yeah, it also goes by the name, according to the NY1, of the Federal Star in Argentina, I think, and the Inca flower in Peru. So, a lot of people like this flower. The Christian explanation is that, there's a couple legends. The Franciscan friars started using them for Christmas parades in Taxco. Taxco? I'm not sure how I pronounce that, but yeah, and then they miraculously turned red. I think they were actually red before that. But yeah, also, and they're sometimes called the Flor de Nochebuena, the flower of the Holy Night.
Mm-hmm.
And there's also a legend about a peasant girl named Pepita, who wanted to give something to the Virgin Mary or the baby Jesus or something, and she went and picked a bunch of weeds from the side of the road and then put them on the altar, and they miraculously turned into Quetzalcoatl, which were very, very pretty. So, yeah, according to hiplatina.com on 12/20/2021, article by Sofia Aguilar, they're also known as the mortal flower that withers and perishes like all that is pure. Sometimes their name is translated to that. So, okie dokie.
Right.
And they were put in temples for the war god's birthday, Huitzilopochtli. They're associated with warriors' blood, apparently. So, and Poinsett, very bad guy, slave owner, also participated in the Trail of Tears. So, not a nice man. We should really stop saying his name. He deserves to be not associated with pretty flowers.
I see. All right. Well, thank you, Rebecca.
You're welcome.
I'm not sure I'm any less confused, though,
Yeah,
after that report.
Me neither.
But
It lived up to its name, that segment. If anyone would like to call in with alternate theories, or better yet, someone who actually studies Nahuatl. I was Googling Nahuatl language experts near me earlier. We need help. I need help.
all right. Well, thanks.
You're welcome.
All right. Okay, so on to ecological news. And of course, ecologically speaking, the big news on the planet right now is the COP30 conference, which the point I didn't make at the first part where I was talking about how terrible corruption is. One of the big reasons that it's so terrible right now is because we don't have time for corruption. You know, one of the main things that happens when you've got a corrupt system is everything gets slowed down because everybody has to take their cut, and you've got to get permission from this one and some bribes there, and permission from that one and bribes there. And we don't have time for that right now as a species, as a planet. We got to move. And the fact that this is COP30, this is the 30th Conference of Party sponsored by the UN to deal with the problem of global warming, and we're still not there yet. Just shows up the fact that we literally don't have time for this, folks. We got to get on our game. Not a lot of positive news coming out of COP30 this year. There's a story in The Guardian on the 14th. Title was "Fossil Fuel Lobbyists Outnumber All COP30 Delegates Except Brazil," report says. In fact, there are 1,600 registered fossil fuel lobbyists at this conference, which is supposedly figuring out how we can get off of fossil fuels. And that's an underestimate because the embedded fossil fuel people in delegations aren't counted with that. Those are just the separate fossil fuel lobbyists. There was a big dramatic thing that happened this past week. Hundreds of indigenous people from the rainforest tried to penetrate the inner circle of the COP conference. The way these conferences are organized is they've got like blue zones and green zones and red zones, and they exile the non-governmental organizations. The environmental groups are in the outermost ring, and as you travel inward, you get closer to the decision makers, and the decision makers are right there in that center section. And so the indigenous people tried to get in to where the actual decisions were being made, and they were stopped by security forces. There's a lot of dramatic pictures of indigenous people in full native regalia being thrown to the ground by guys in security outfits. Was not good. Not a good picture. of them trying to get into the blue zone, as it's called. I've caught some of the press conferences, some of the events that have been streamed, and unfortunately, not hearing a lot of good stuff. They're talking about spending money on resiliency, which is a waste of money at this point because until you stop putting the carbon in the air, it doesn't matter how much you spend on resiliency. The disasters are going to overwhelm your defenses. They are talking about creating something called a Baku de Balim, $1.3 trillion roadmap to carbon reduction, which is nice. And the U.S., thanks to our short-sighted President Trump, does not have a delegation at COP30. In his place, the governor of California, speaking of California, Gavin Newsom went, and he's making speeches and signing memorandums of understanding with lots of different countries to exchange technologies and infrastructure, learning how other countries are coping and making the switch to carbon-free. So the U.S. is kind of represented, even though we're not officially represented. There are 193 other countries plus the EU there, so 194. And so things are happening, but again, it's too slow to save us. And part of the reason for that is, of course, corruption. So moving on to the next story. And this is kind of good news. It's sort of a bittersweet news. The Navajo Times on November 10th, title is EPA begins cleanup of uranium mine waste in Lakachukai Mountains. And they're going to remove 13,000 cubic yards of uranium mining wastes. And the works actually started on November 5th. This will clean up 3 of the 300 or so mines. It's called the Mesa Mine. And this is a mine that sits above the Cove and Isal communities. And right now, people graze their livestock in that area. They do recreation hunting there. But these mine tailings, these radioactive mine tailings, are radioactive. And they've been causing, for about the past 70 years, they've been causing cancer rates and birth defects and all the horrible things that radiation causes. Now, the mining wastes are going to be stored on site. It's called a permanent storage. But supposedly they'll be entombed in concrete so they can stop putting that radioactive dust into the atmosphere and on the ground and into the plants and animals and people. This is expected to take 1 year, $13 million, and let's hope that they finally do manage to clean this up. Next story, Guardian on November 10th. China's CO2 emissions have been flat or falling for the past 18 months, analysis finds. So this is one where we can pause and say, yay, because we've been hoping for this. We've been waiting for this for a long time because China is the world's biggest CO2 emitter, but they've been putting up so much wind and solar that they've actually, even though their demand has increased, their emissions are flat or declining. And this is probably means that China has finally hit peak carbon, and that's well ahead of schedule. They weren't planning to do the peak carbon until 2030, so 6 years ahead of time. That's great. The amount of solar in the past year has gone up 46%. The amount of wind gone up 11%. So even though demand is increasing, as I said, emissions are flat or declining. Just in the January to September of this year, they added 240 gigawatts of solar, which is equivalent to about 240 nuclear power plants. So great news there coming from China. Next story, some more good news. This was in Electrek.com, Electrek, on November 12th. The title is, EV sales still have not fallen, cooled, slowed, or slumped. Media is lying to you. And the thrust of this article is for about the past 2 years, all the mainstream reporting on EV sales, electric vehicle sales, has been saying that talking about how the percentage of growth rates has declined. And, a couple of years ago, growth rates were about 50% per year. Now it's only about, quote unquote, only about 25%. But the reason for this decline in the percent of increase is that there's now thousands and thousands more cars. So you can't keep doubling. Back when they were increasing by like 50% a year, there were only a few thousand EVs on the road. Now there's literally millions, and you can't literally keep doubling things every year. Remember the old story about the chessboard, the guy who asked for a grain of rice, like put 1 on the first square and then double it to 2 and then put 4 on the next square, to keep doubling it all 64 squares of the chessboard. And by the time you get to the last squares, there's not enough rice on the planet to do that final thing, because you just literally physically, mathematically can't keep doubling. So the growth is still increasing, and it's very healthy. In 2021, 2020 to 21, it doubled, but of course it can't keep doing that. But right now, Norway has, this past year, 98.3% of vehicle sales were EVs, even though that's only an increase of 14.6%, but that's up from 96.4%. So they're almost to 100%. So they can't keep doubling their EV sales, because that would be doubling their sales of all their cars. So the first 10 months of 2025, real EV sales have increased by 23%. That's 32% in the EU, 22% in China, and 48% the rest of the world. Now, the other thing that this article points out is that there's real decline in internal combustion engine cars, ICE cars. Apparently, they peaked in 2017, and we don't hear about this, but they've been declining very steadily since 2017. They were 80 million at that time, and now they're down to 60 million, and the projections are they're going to, go down even more, even faster in the next couple of years.
Oh, by the way, I had an alert listener point out to me that I probably should have mentioned last week during the Cuyahoga Valley National Park segment that they also have the Cuyahoga Valley Scenic Railroad, which I checked one time, and it's still going in the winter, and you can go on beautiful Christmas snow tours through the park on a train, looking at the scenery.
Well, cool. Well, thanks for that.
I would like to do that, actually.
That little update. Yeah, me too. That sounds fun. Maybe we'll do that and go and do a live report or something.
There we go.
All right.
We're on a train and there's snow.
Okay, next story. Got some good news here. Our nemesis Holtec, the evil Holtec Corporation.
Oh, not again.
Well, no, this is good.
Okay.
A story of the Plymouth Independent on November 9th. They've been trying to get permission to dump 800,000 gallons of radioactive water into Cape Cod Bay. And the title of this story was "Holtec appears unlikely to win appeal of radioactive water ruling."
Good.
Yes. So Cape Cod Bay is protected by a law called the Open Sanctuaries Act, which basically prohibits all industrial waste dumping into Cape Cod Bay. And so the regulatory bodies there in Massachusetts have said, no,
Good.
you just can't do it.
And my cousin has a vacation home. I guess it's been in the family for a couple generations on Cape Cod.
Oh, good.
I would hate to think that they're all getting irradiated.
Well, unfortunately,
they are a little bit.
Yeah, unfortunately, what Holtec is now doing instead is they're evaporating the water. Instead of dumping it into the bay, they're putting it into the air.
Okay.
And they're saying that
that couldn't possibly go wrong.
Right. And of course, that actually is not good, because inhaling radioactive tritium, the radioactive isotope of hydrogen that's in tritium into your lungs is actually, since it's an alpha emitter, it's actually more dangerous than drinking it in drinking water. So
Wow.
So they are evil, and they're still continuing their evil, but at least we managed to, to thwart one of their evil plans. All right, last story, and this is an invasive species story coming out of Michigan, our neighbors to the north there. WILX in Lansing, Michigan on November 13th. Ready for this? Invasive jumping worms.
No!
Damage Michigan
I'm not ready for
ecosystems.
this.
Yeah. No, I'm sorry. Yep. These are
I already
worms,
know.
earthworms, that can literally jump up to a foot in the air. And yeah, people describe it as being kind of nightmarish. People who are,
I feel like that might not be a fun surprise.
yeah, like people whose gardens got invaded and they're
Uh-huh.
down there like weeding and stuff, and all of a sudden worms start jumping all over them.
Ew,
Yeah,
ew,
it's
ew,
not
ew,
good.
No.
Yeah, they're very damaging to the ecosystems
I
because
don't
they
want to share my personal space with worms.
no, oh, don't want them in your hair or anything like that.
Oh.
Yeah, they're damaging because they disturb plant roots, and they also eat leaf litter. And normal earthworms eat leaf litter, right?
Mhm.
But then when they excrete, when they do their worm droppings, they do that mostly under the ground, and so the nutrients in the leaves get recycled back in.
Right.
These worms stay up on top of the ground,
Oh.
and so then when it rains or there's any precipitation, all those wonderful nutrients just wash off into streams,
Oh.
and they make the soil less and less fertile. And apparently, if a place has had them for a while, what you get is this like gravel-like sterilized kind of soil.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Just what we need.
And yeah, so they were already been found in Detroit, Grand Rapids, Michigan. It's a complete failure of the government. It's a repeat of the emerald ash borer because the state of Michigan should be doing literally everything they can to contain and eliminate them now, while it's still just in a part of one state instead of letting them spread all over the country like they did the emerald ash borer. So let's hope they get on the ball. We're going to contact them. That's it. That's it for this show. Thank you so much for listening, folks. Joe DeMare,
And Rebecca Wood.
signing off.
Fussing and fighting, and I do believe it's time we was done. I don't want them nukes run by them kooks who think radioactivity is fun. No more three-headed frogs or kids with leukemia. Nuclear power ain't fit for a dog. The sun done give us all we need to make this country run. But that nuclear power's got us fussing and fighting, and I do